Again, I'm used to seeing weird new phrases coined to describe old and familiar concepts. This is sometimes done with the intention of making a bad idea look good, and indeed vice versa. Take patriotism, which means a love of one's country, usually combined with pride in its culture, history, and values. Nothing wrong with that, right? But wait, if we describe these things instead as cultural nationalism, then there is a serious problem, because that is an extreme right-wing terrorist ideology. No, I'm not joking about this. The PREVENT programme, which is dedicated to spotting people who are in danger of being radicalised and perhaps at risk of being drawn into terrorist conspiracies, have decided that patriotism is a distinctly dangerous idea in the modern world. At least English patriotism is. What about concern regarding mass immigration to Britain? This too is, according to PREVENT, a sinister ideology. I quote from one of their documents which says that anybody who feels that Western culture is under threat from mass migration and a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups is indeed a potential terrorist, and such thinking needs to be nipped in the bud before it leads to violence. There are, of course, those of us who think that it is mass migration which needs to be nipped in the bud because it is that which leads to violence. But then I expect I'm just the sort of person for whom PREVENT is keeping its eyes open. I love that expression, cultural nationalism. It means people who prefer their own nation and culture to those of others, of course. In England, it means people who feel stirred by hearing Rule Britannia, Land of Hope and Glory, and of course the national anthem. The kind of people who love the sight of the English countryside, have an instinctive affection for the ways and traditions of their country. People who feel that their way of life is precious and worth defending. You know, patriotic people. Often such people will indeed have reservations about mass migration and do see it as a threat to their country's culture. There are, of course, two reasons why the government have encouraged PREVENT to take such a line. One is because most of the terrorist sympathisers and fellow travellers whom PREVENT comes up against are, of course, Muslims, many of whom are from Pakistani families. This looks truly dreadful on the monitoring forms, and it gives a feeling of Islamophobia. How come the great majority of those that PREVENT is dealing with are Muslims from immigrant families? That can't be right. It looks racist. The drive to target white people who love their country and feel uneasy about the levels of immigration means that one spreads the net very widely indeed, and the proportion of Muslim referrals is sure to drop dramatically. With luck, if you keep this up, you will find that your suspected terrorist sympathisers will start to reflect the population, to use the current jargon. In other words, you'll see that the great majority of referrals to PREVENT will be for white British people, and only a small minority for Muslims. This looks much better. Of course, it does mean you're going to miss the actual terrorists in this country, the people who are setting off bombs, 100% of whom are Muslim, but that's a matter of little import when compared to the accusation of Islamophobia being levelled at a government body. The second reason for all this is that it will enable the government to clamp down on free speech a bit more. If you define cultural nationalism as a dangerous right-wing terrorist ideology, then you can stop people expressing patriotism and threaten them with legal action. This is great because you can then control the population closely and tell anybody moaning about immigration that they are probably extreme right-wing terrorists. As usual, in the description to this video I give links to one or two news items about this matter.